Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We have a tire for you that honestly, I wasn't sure we were ever actually gonna look at. That's loud. I also have Lars here because Lars is gonna be the person driving on these. What are you driving with these tires?
I'm gonna try these out on the M3, the E46 M3.
So we have an E46 M3, we track it at Road America. We actually test a bunch of different tires on it, and there's been a tire that's been growing on the autocross and motorsports side of things for probably the greater part of a year. And that, my friends, is this tire right here. It's called the Vitour P1. And it's a pretty interesting tire right off the gate, which you guys and gals might be wondering, is it actually worth picking up? So I got Lars here. Lars knows a little bit about the tire, so do I. And we're gonna help educate you guys on why you might actually wanna pick this up or why you might not. Now, before we get into it too much, I'm just gonna get the obvious out of the way. And I know it's like a car show thing to care about. This tread design looks awfully
It's a little
similar.
familiar.
It looks awfully similar to a very specific Michelin tire tread. Now, there's only so many ways I suppose you could get the tire tread to do what it needs to do on a 200 treadwear tire like this one. We're not gonna spend too much time on it, but you can obviously see there's a little comparison,
Yeah.
little familiarity. There is some things that are very unique that's got swordfishes in there. Listen, I know we don't need to talk about the swordfish, but I'm still talking about it. Water razor technology, AKA the exit channels for the rain.
Yeah.
What else do we got on this thing that looks kind of neat?
It's missing, it doesn't have the felt sidewall that the Sport Cup 2s have.
Yeah, so it's a pretty basic sidewall. You're not getting anything too crazy. This is a 265/35 ZR18. Now it says on the side here, P1R Japan technology. What does that actually mean? Well, when you look into the 200 treadwear design style tires, you're gonna see a lot of people compare the Vitour P1 to the RE71 RS, the AO52. You're not gonna really see many comparisons to the Michelins just because the price point is so different.
Drastically.
But this is probably the most affordable out of the three. Now, the P01R essentially is their nomenclature for their racing compound that they're putting into this tire specifically, and it's their take on what they think is the most competitive tire. Now, I think we should just get the obvious out of the way. Two biggest reasons as to why you'd buy this if you are interested. Number one, the price.
Price, definitely price.
It's one of the most affordable and high-performing 200 treadwear tires you can buy.
So why are 200 treadwear tires so expensive?
Well, 200 treadwear tires are expensive for a couple different reasons. Number one, the number 200 is what a lot of people are gonna see for their regulation use for autocross and things like that. If they wanna be competitive, they'll tell you, hey, you can run to a 200 treadwear tire. What that typically means is that you're gonna get a pretty sticky tire in some way, shape, or form. But what a lot of people care about when you start getting into the budget stuff is longevity and how you can actually use the tire. Now, one of the things that makes the P1 really special is this can also be used on the road. Contrary to popular belief, I know a lot of people won't agree with me on this. As long as the weather's not too bad, actually, there are a lot of people that this is their one and only tire for their Miata, like their NDs, their NCs, and things like that. And if you notice, the Vitour P1, it's actually got a little bit of a narrower sidewall if you compare it to the RE71 RS or even the AO52, which means that this sidewall has a lot less flex than you would on a comparison tire. So the number one reason, price, I think is a big one. The second biggest reason, if you're out there and you own a Mustang or a Corvette or a Miata or some of those weird funky platforms in autocross, the Vitour P1 has a size for you. I think that's probably one of the coolest things about this brand is it was kind of founded by people that were big into the autocross and track and motorsport scene. And so a lot of the sizing is built for some of these cars. Like even seeing a 265/35 ZR18 200 treadwear, not that bad. It's pretty cool.
The list was very complete when I was looking through it. It had everything from Cayman, Fitments, Camaros, Mustangs, BMWs, everything I was looking for. So
yeah, and it's a really cool setup. You guys are wondering, we do have these over on martiniworks.com, and we're spending a lot of time talking about this tire specifically and how it compares because this is one of the most controversial tires I think that's out there right now. It's cheap, it's available, a lot of people are running them. There's a ton of marketing dollars put behind them, which is obviously making people who spend more time looking at spreadsheets than looking at like people of, you know, personal interest, a little hesitant, we'd say. Like the nerds of motorsport are very curious on like,
The people that run this type of tire are very particular about a handful of things. The treadwear 200 puts you in an odd category of customers. So I'm excited to try this one out. I'm really curious how this is going to do in the wet.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that if you were trying to compare it to the RE71 RS, that's going to be at least on like a 235, 3518 is probably going to be about $60 more than the Vitour P1. Where are you getting the reduction of value? The number one place is going to be the weather. The Vitour P1 does not do as well in weather inclement conditions. It can still do it, it can still run it. You do have to be a little bit more careful with this tire when you compare it to something like an AO52 or an RE71. But what I can say is it still has what you need to get through the rain. You know, we're not looking at a straight up slick, so you still have the channels that you need, especially when you're considering where that shoulder strength is on this tire specifically. You can see that it is not a symmetrical design across the entire treadwear. That's gonna help with making sure that you get the water evacuation that you need. The depth also isn't actually that deep, if you notice. It's got enough to get you by, but not enough to do, you know, too much for too long, I would say.
It also has very like square shoulders. That's something I noticed when looking at it up closely, and the way the tread runs to the edges is very interesting.
Yeah, so the big thing about that, and I sound like a salesperson right now, but like I have all this knowledge in my head and I don't want to lose it because I spent a lot of time actually doing research on that. The sidewall here is, like I talked about, it's very, very stiff. It's actually a little bit narrow, and how that impacts somebody, if you guys are actually looking to pick up a set, is how that's going to dial in your fitment and your setup, especially on your camber settings for the track. What a lot of people will say is they'll throw the Vitour P1 on and they'll be like, hey, I ran the RE71 RS, or hey, I ran another 200 treadwear tire. These just aren't doing it for me. For some reason, it's understeering into the corner. Or a lot of people, especially on front wheel drive setups, they're like, I just can't seem to get the temperatures right on these sort of things. And what I can say is the Vitour P1 requires a little bit of finesse to get the most out of it. And I think that's where, again, you're probably getting a little bit of a lower cost is comparison to something more out of the box like an RE71 RS, where it might just do what you want it to do right away, or the AO52 might just do everything all the time right out of the way. The Vitour P1 is a little bit more sensitive to your camber settings. A lot of people will say you don't need to be as aggressive with the camber, especially in the fronts, if you're running this setup, because the sidewall is a little bit stiff.
That's interesting to know for cars that maybe aren't set up for the track full time. Like I struggled in the M2 on those Sport Cup 2s because I didn't have any camber in the front. So this would have maybe been a good choice for that. And
that's what a lot of people are saying, is that you actually don't need to run as aggressive a setup because the sidewall is stiff enough to kind of handle a lot of that lateral load. But what people will say too is, you know, the biggest thing with the 200 treadwear tire, if you guys are trying to jump into this market, is how does it handle with temperatures? Because temperatures determine longevity. The cheap tires make zero difference if you have to replace them twice as fast as something that might be 10% more expensive, right? And the Vitour does a really good job with that. I will say they're really, really known for being very, very good on the grip, very, very good on hard braking, turn-ins, things like that, as long as your suspension is set up correctly, which is why I think sometimes if you go out there and you do some research on Reddit, you'll see some people say, it wasn't really for me, I didn't like it. And a lot of times people will respond with, okay, well, what was your setup? What were you running on the ND? And they'll say, oh, well, I was running, 3.5 or 4 degrees. And a lot of times people say, pull that back half a degree. Pull that to 3 or 2.5. And I know we're getting into the weeds here, but this is more of like a motorsport tire. So you need to know some of this if you're gonna spend money on this.
And if you're gonna be in this bracket, it's important that your car is set up for that amount of traction to begin with anyway. So as much as we talk about good tires, they're not a cure-all. When you get to this level of competitiveness, the car has to be built around this level of traction with camber, suspension settings, bushings, and everything else.
Yeah, I would say the P1 does a really great job though in terms of once it gets up to temperature. I've seen a lot of people on the internet, they'll kind of talk about how, hey, you need to get this thing up to temp. It'll get up to temp quicker than the competition. I've seen and heard, and we're actually gonna be driving these at Road America here in a couple weeks, so be sure to subscribe so you guys can keep an eye out on that. But I have heard that these can actually take in the temperature much quicker than a lot of the competition, even though it's more expensive, which means you can get more performance out of lap 1 than a lot of other tires out there, which is a big deal.
That's important because if on track days, if you're not actively racing, you may only have a 20-minute session. And at Road America, for example, the out lap can take you 4 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to get some heat in there quick so you can get started.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good thing. Now, I will say another one of the things, kind of we're getting into the mess of it all. So if you guys don't like this, just let us know and we'll make it a little bit more broad in the future. But the performance window of the Vitour P1 in terms of temperatures is something to keep in mind. There's a lot of people that will say, depending on the weight and the size of the vehicle, it can be a little bit trickier to kind of nail in. If you're running a square setup, you're doing autocross, let's say you got a 3,600 pound car, so you've got a Nissan Z, you've got a Camaro, you've got a Corvette, you've got, you know, a lot of the popular stuff right now.
New M cars.
Yeah, a lot of the new M cars. You're probably not gonna feel an issue with the temperature tire as much, especially like on the short course stuff. But what people will say is that when they're running, because some people with front wheel drive Type Rs and things like that, they'll actually run, you know, a sticky tire up front and then they'll run like an AO52 in the back, or they'll run something else in the back because they just need it to give the traction back there, but they really need the grip up front. Yeah. In those cases, sometimes the temperature climbs a little bit quicker, and a lot of times because that temperature climbs faster, it requires a little bit more management. And so again, the Vitour P1 is kind of coming out as this really good, affordable tire, but it does feel a little bit like an immediate meal at a fast food restaurant. They kind of are giving you some of the ingredients and they're saying, okay, you need to put it together to really get the best meal out of it with the Vitour P1. And that's not a bad thing. Obviously you're saving money on it, but it is something to keep in mind.
And it's a really interesting price bracket and tier to fall into because again, like if you're out there and you're trying to get practice and seat time, you need a tire that you can, you know, reuse again and again to get used to, right? You have to set a baseline for what the car does and what you can do. So this is a great tire to practice on, and I'm excited to go try it out.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys are looking at the cost, a 245/40/18 is probably going to be around $280 per tire over on martiniworks.com right now. And remember, we can actually mount these with wheels and ship them to your door. It's a really great way so that all you have to do is throw them on. Or if you're looking to do a bulk order or anything like that for the season, we actually offer that as well. And we do price match guarantee. We also have the lowest prices on things. The Vitour P1 is an interesting one. So I'm really excited for you to give it a shot because it is a newer tire. And I know the Vitour line also has a little bit of weird history out there depending on where you look, whether that's with FD, whether that's with the original owner. Needless to say, we're really excited to have them on the website. We have a good buddy up here that actually runs Vitour P1s. His name is Jay. He's got a ton of history in the autocross world. It was actually him that sparked my curiosity in the brand, and so I'm really excited to get our own feedback on it. But if you guys are looking to learn more about the Vitour P1, we actually have a blog out on the website as well. We'll be getting some on-hand experience with Lars and the E46 M3. It's a great budget 200 treadwear tire that can really do it all. Once it's up to heat cycle, it has incredible grip. We've heard absolutely incredible things about it. It does not give up, it does not give in, but it does require a little bit of focus around how you have your suspension set up, your camber set up, a little bit more tire management, a little bit more algebra. It's not necessarily just like a throw it on and forget about it. So you guys will have to let us know your thoughts on the tire as well. And if you have any questions before we take it out on the track, drop it below. Be sure to subscribe, and Lars, wish you the best of luck, dude.
Thanks, I'm excited. Should be a good one.
All right, we'll see you guys later.